Hello and welcome to another video. On this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Talargoch mine, which is on the North Wales coast between the villages of Dyzeth and Melodyn. On my right you can see a white cottage, and that would be the original miner's office, and then on my left is a big rocky outcrop, a limestone one, and that's known as Craigflower. And to get a true perspective of just how big this mine was, I'm going to go for a walk up there. Leaving the Miners' Memorial in the village of Melodyn, I travel southwest along the A547 towards Dyzeth. Turning left at the Dyzeth Falls Resort, I head up the incline towards Craigflower. In the centre of the screen we can see the chalets of the Dyzeth Falls Resort and the large stone building which is the Clive engine house. This is the south end of the Talargoch ore field. Moving along the edge of Craigflower and looking down, the three main lead veins run alongside the road closest to my camera position and at the bottom of the screen. They eventually end in the village of Melodyn, adjacent to St Melod Church. In the distance is Bishop's Wood. The Prestatian fault line is just below Bishop's Wood and prevented miners going any further due to too much shale being mixed in with the minerals they was after. Coming off the hillside, I next visit the church of St Melod in the village of Melodyn. The existing church can trace its foundation back to the 13th century and was written about in the Domesday Book. At the west gable is a bell cote with two openings but only one bell. To the rear, a circular raised graveyard suggests that there could have been an even older burial site at this location before the church was built. Many mining families would have worshipped here as the village developed and grew alongside the mines. In the lower part of the village, some of the original miners' cottages and horse stables still exist. Nowadays it's a private residential area. Adjacent to the modern day post office on Talargoch Road is the Melodyn National School. It was built in 1842 by the mining companies. The building is made of sandstone brought to Melodyn from the nearby village of Gwespa. National schools were a precursor to our modern schools. This particular one had a day school and a Sunday school for children working at the mine. It remained a school right up until the 1940s. Today it's a Freemasons Lodge. Walking back to the main road, I passed the Miners' Arms public house. There was a monthly fair held here on miners' paydays. Stalls would be set up along the road and locals would sell their homemade produce such as baked goods, medicinal cures and candy sweets. It would have been much like a street market. Only 3 pubs exist in the village today, but in the mid-1800s there was as many as 7. Moving on to the next village, I visit St Brigid's Church in Dyzeth. In the graveyard can be found the hooded tombs of the Hughes family. Underneath the hoods of the tombs are skulls and crossbones. This has less to do with pirates and more to do with man's mortality. Even the remains of the family's coat of arms is still visible. The Hughes family was the most important family in Dyzeth in the 17th century, with their main residence being Dyzeth Hall. In 1681, John Hughes leased land in the general area to Colonel Roger Whitley of Peel, who had a keen interest in mining. Through the marriage of Elizabeth Whitley to the Earl of Plymouth in 1705, the land ownership was passed on to the Windsor Clive family. So I've now had a good look around the villages of Melodyn and Dyzeth. Behind me you can see the Clive engine house, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video. I want to turn my attention now towards the mine itself. how did the miners actually get the ore out of the rock? What kind of techniques and methods did they use? In order to explain that, I've got to go underground. So here I am deep underground in a lead mine. In the early days, what they would have done to extract the ore out of the rock was something called fire setting. And all that means is they'd find a crevice, jam a load of combustible materials in there like paper or rags or anything like that, and then they set fire to it and heat the rock up. Then they'd throw cold water on it or vinegar, that was recommended at one time, and that would what we call thermal fracture the rock, and then obviously they'd be able to get at it a little bit better. Then later on they started to use things called gads, which basically a gad is a piece of steel, or a piece of iron should I say, about a foot long, and they would gad it down with a hammer, just like we do today with a hammer and chisel really, and chisel away at the rock. Another technique they used obviously was drilling, and I'll show you an example of drilling a little bit further down into the mine. We can actually see what the miners was after. You can probably make out just along the wall there where my torch is pointing, and just underneath here. This is called galena, and this is like a black rock, and this is the lead ore that they was after. Obviously they got other minerals out of the mines as well. They would have got, there's no examples that I can see, but they would have got kind of calcite, they would have mined for zinc and small amounts of silver as well. So this particular vein is about an inch thick, and the ones at Talargoch would have been anything between kind of this thickness, 30 centimetres up to 9 feet. So if you think I'm 5'9", 9 feet's quite a large amount of vein. Absolutely fantastic. So here we can see where they drilled. This would have been done with either a gad or a drill, which was made out of iron. Both items were made out of iron, and it'd be a two-man job. One man would be on the gad, twisting it, while one man was hitting it with a sledgehammer, and that's how they would get the hole. Then they would put the charge in and put sticking, which is basically clay. They'd put that over the top, poke a hole through with a copper bar, put the fuse wire in, and then obviously they'd be able to explode it. Something this size, some of these would have taken up to 6 to 10 hours to actually do one hole. An experienced miner could do probably 6 holes in a day, in a shift, and then explode them at the end of the day. But all along this wall I can see is there's evidence of drilling all along here. Just as an example, I like some modern day fuse. This is similar to the fuses used in dynamite at Talargoch mine. Bearing in mind this is just one fuse, miners would have used a lot more than this, plus they would have debris, dust and smoke from the explosion itself. Even with my high-powered torches, it still made it difficult to see the mine exit, which was only 20 feet away. Very thick smoke here. So we've managed to find some galena or lead ore. This is it here, the black on the within the limestone. See, it's got a few chunks of it here. The whole area between Melodon and Dysart, including Talargoch, is limestone. Limestone acts as an aquifer, storing large amounts of water in faults, bed planes, fissures and cavities. As the miners went deeper, they ran into the expensive problem of draining the workings. The very simple solution to this problem is to dig a parallel shaft to the working. These are known as adits and allow the water to drain away. Unfortunately, the use of adits wasn't possible at Talargoch due to its low-lying geographical position and the geological positions of the minerals. Around the mid-1800s, water wheels were used to pump water out of the mine. But where did the water come from to power the wheels? So you may be wondering why I've been traipsing through farmers' fields and in the undergrowth, and this is the reason why. This is the River Fidion. Downstream it feeds the top of Dysart waterfalls, and upstream about a quarter of a mile is a place called Pandy Mill. It's at this area where in 1843 Paul Panton of Baghill actually created a leat from this location that fed the Talargoch mines, and it's my mission today to follow the leat all the way through. So I've managed to get into the river just where that weir is, and in front of me I can clearly see where the river would have carried straight on. In a second I'll show you a clip of at the top of the weir, and if you look in the sides of the walls you can see where they would have put planks of wood in to divert the water course along the leat. So I've just crossed over onto this side of the river using a little bit of a rickety footbridge at Grove Mill, and there's a public footpath that goes through this land, so I'm okay. You can see behind me this big row of trees. The leat does actually follow the course of these trees. I have been down there and it is very mushy underfoot, and yet I found more evidence of the leat down in that area just down there. My footpath goes off in this direction and the leat continues down the valley here, and at some point I'm going to lose it anyway. One, because it's on private property, and two, it actually goes into a culvert and I don't think I'll be able to find that, but I'm going to try and pick it up on the other side to Castle on the main road there. But I'll just show you down here and then we'll continue on. In amongst the trees I found this little bridge that allowed access over the leat. When the leat was in use, the water level would have been a lot lower. At this point I lose the leat completely, but it's not long before I'm hot on its tail again. Walking into the village of Castle, I found the culvert for the leat that I previously lost in someone's garden. With the permission of the owner, I began filming. I was amazed that the leat at this point still had water in it and a date of construction. Into another field and the leat dries up again. Then I found another culvert and I couldn't resist going in to explore. So this is looking towards the end of the culvert. You can just see on the sides here where the water level would have been. It's all made out of stone, the roof. It looks like a mixture of sandstone and limestone. So at this point I'm in this old quarry, and this used to be a mound, and on top of the mound used to be Dizeth Castle. And it's at this point where I lose the lead on the land. And if we look at this map now, we can clearly see the direction that the lead took, and then it went over an aqueduct which fed the Talargoch mines. So now we've established from 1844 onwards, Talargoch mine had a regular supply of water. They kept the water wheels turning and kept the workings dry, and for the main part kept them from flooding. But like all mines of the area, flooding was just one risk that miners had to take on a day-to-day basis. From 1873 to 1844 there was a total of 5 deaths at this mine. There was probably more, but they're the ones that are accounted for. And there's one particularly harrowing story about a son and a father. In the winter of 1878, on December the 21st, Evan Williams, aged 39, was killed by the explosion of a charge of dynamite. Evans, along with his son David, aged 15, was boring a hole and preparing to use dynamite. The explosive was frozen and needed to be thawed before use. We mustn't forget that the use of high explosives was a relatively new technology in the industry at the time. The father put the dynamite into a tin over a candle, and they both sat down on a barrow to eat some bread and butter, and while doing so the dynamite exploded. The father was hurled against the side of the level and killed instantly. The son was thrown a considerable distance, but his only injury was that his existing deafness was increased. Between the 1850s and the 1870s, huge advancements in steam power technology had been made, which gave the miners the upper hand of keeping the workings dry and free from flooding. By 1874, there was no less than 15 steam engines on this site and 19 boiler houses. The Clive shaft was sunk between 1842 and 1845 and was 750 feet deep. In comparison, Blackpool Tower is a mere 519 feet tall. Originally the shaft was equipped with a 50-inch cylinder that pumped the water out, but it was soon realised that a much bigger pump was needed. In 1860, the 3-storey Clive engine house was built by a local man called Thomas Roberts and his sons. It was named after the Windsor Clive family, who owned mineral rights in the mines. 2 years after its construction, a brand new Cornish-style beam engine with a 100-inch cylinder was installed. The engine and its huge 85-ton beam was supplied by the Hughes Foundry in Wigan. The floor of the engine house needed to be strong. It was made out of 1.5 foot thick sandstone blocks. The engine cylinder was secured by 6 bolts, which were tightened from underneath in a bolt tunnel. The beam was connected to a bob shaft and then to a series of pumps in the mine shaft itself. It drew millions of gallons of water to the surface and then into a sluice adit, which can still be seen today. So we're at the front end of the engine house, and the front wall would be called the bob wall, and that's where that big 85-ton beam would have sat, right in the middle of that. And you can see here where they've put big iron bars through the whole of the building, right through to the other side, with these big metal flanges, big nuts to try and contain the whole thing, because all that pressure of the 85 tons on top of the walls would have tried to splay the bottom out. So they've put these braces in all the way through to stop that happening. So on this side of the engine house would have been the boiler house, and here we can see a door, and it would have had wooden steps that come down to ground level. In front of me would have been 7 egg end boilers, and about 40 metres in that direction would have been a chimney that took away all the smoke from the boilers from the coal being burnt. Over 1,200 tonnes of coal a month was brought to the mines from the Point of Ayre colliery by railway. The mine finally closed in 1883, mainly due to the rising costs of coal. In 1884, the 100-inch engine was sold to the Westminster Colliery near Wrexham for a mere £1,000. So that concludes this video. I've really enjoyed making it and researching all about the Talargoch mines. Join me next time when I take a look at a very different industry of this area, and that's all to do with Marion Mills in Dizeth. Until next time, thank you for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon.